With this, we reach the end of our Hacking for Beginners course. I would like to congratulate you on completing this course. You've come a very long way since we first began. We covered a lot of ground in this course, although it was a short course, but make no mistake, we have covered a lot of ground, and I hope by now you have gained a solid foundation and a very good understanding of all these concepts that we discussed in such a way that you can now start building on top of these. We talked about what the internet is and how does it work. What are IP addresses? What is the difference between public IP addresses, private IP addresses, and why they are needed? We talked about network address translation and how it connects private IP addresses to the internet. We also explained what DNS is and how it's an integral part of the internet. We talked about what servers are, what services are that run on these servers, and how all this comes together to create the internet that we know of. And we said that for you to be able to hack remotely, you need 4 different components: the IP address, an exposed remote service running on the IP address, a vulnerability in the service, and an exploit. Then we proceeded to explain what services and ports are, and how each service would have a different port number. For example, mail would have port 25, and web would have port 80. But that's not just it. We said that the web does not have a port number only assigned to it. It also has a protocol assigned to the port number. So for example, web would be running on port 80 on TCP, the Transmission Control Protocol. We explained what protocols are, how the Internet Protocol or the IP has the sole purpose of delivery. It cares about the source and the destination only. How the TCP, which works on top of IP, takes care of the correctness of the order of packets, the errors in the packets, and the lost packets. And we explained what the TCP three-way handshake is. We also talked about HTTP, the basis of data communication on the World Wide Web, and how HTTP works in conjunction with TCP and IP. We looked at an HTTP request and we dissected some packets. We looked at the IP packets, we saw the source IP address, the destination IP address, the source port number, the destination port number. We looked at the TCP packets and we saw how the flags are set, the SYN flag, the SYN ACK flag, and the ACK flag. And we saw how the HTTP GET request works. Then we moved on to talk about how you can identify open ports and running services on machines, and how you can do that using port scanning. And then you got introduced to your first hacking tool, Nmap. You learned what a SYN scan is and how does it work, and you did a port scan against hackthisite.org and against the Metasploitable machine on your virtual machine environment. And then we talked about vulnerability scanning, the third step in our hacking methodology. So first we identified the IP address, second we identified the open ports and running services, and then third we identified the vulnerabilities on these services using the Nessus vulnerability scanning tool. We picked 2 vulnerabilities from the Nessus scanning tool, one vulnerability with a weak password and another one with the remote code execution vulnerability. The first one was super easy to exploit. All we needed was a piece of software that helps us connect to the service, and using the password we were able to log in remotely to the target machine. The second one was a little bit more complicated and a little bit more fancy. And for that, we used the Metasploit framework, which has thousands of exploits readily available in it. We picked the exploit that worked for us and we use it to gain remote access over the target machine. So with that, we covered the 4 stages of hacking. We identified the IP address, we identified the exposed running services, we identified the vulnerabilities on these services, and last but definitely not least, we exploited these vulnerabilities to take remote control over our target machine. So there's a lot of ground that you covered, so many different concepts that you learned, and for hanging in there, I would like to say congratulations. Now you might be wondering what's next for me. And to answer this question, I want to take you back to one of the very first slides, the Hackers Academy way of learning. First, you learn and master the foundations. Second, you practice, practice, practice. Third, you share knowledge. And 4, you learn some more. Now that you've learned the foundations, it's time for you to practice a little bit more. Go and redo these exercises. Make sure that you understand each and every single one of your missions, that you've completed your missions. And remember to record your success, because once you submit the report, once you submit all the screenshots and the outputs from your missions, there's a very valuable prize waiting for you. So practice, practice, practice. Hang out on the Hackers Academy forum and share your knowledge. Answer questions that your fellow students have. Share some of the discoveries you made. Maybe you learned a new technique. Maybe you found a new tool. Make sure you share this with your fellow students. And then, once you're very comfortable with all that, it's time for you to learn some more. Go to the Hackers Academy training page. Find out what other courses might interest you. I would suggest one of two courses. If you want to learn more about Linux, we have the Linux for Hackers course. Or if you want to dive more into ethical hacking and penetration testing, we have the Professional Penetration Testing course ready for you. But do note though that the Professional Penetration Testing course is a very challenging course. It's not an easy course. It's 4 or 5 days of continuous hands-on practical learning that teaches you how to become a professional ethical hacker. So pick one of the courses that you find yourself interested in. Get in touch with us, ask us about these courses and how you can enroll in them, and get on your way onto becoming a professional expert ethical hacker. I look forward to hearing soon from you, and until then, happy hacking.